You're listening to Sax in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sax in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at saxinthebasement.com. I'm going to kick off the show, my friend, with an announcement that is already out there, but I like to wait until I know all the details. So today I was on a Zoom call with our good friends from the 108, Section 108 guys. If you pay attention to any of the broadcast, you hear them mentioned from time to time. They have their own podcast, they have their own blog. Most in White Sox fandom know who they are. And we are hashing out the details because we're doing a combined live show.
A live show.
First night of the weekend series, Sox Cubs, in August. On August the 9th, starting at 5 p.m. at Cork and Kerry at the Park, the home of the podcast for fans, by fans, Sox in the Basement. It'll be myself, My Sox Summer, Chirizi E on the microphones. And there's a trade-off there. Beef Loaf's out and you're out because we just need the space. 5 guys is too much.
I know how it works. I know
5 guys is too much, my friend. Okay, but you're welcome to walk through the crowd.
Let's face it. With Beef Loaf and I, we count as at least 2.5 men apiece.
There you go.
So we're 5 guys unto ourselves. Either that, or we're just going to go to 5 guys and eat. But the burgers at Cork and Kerry at the Park are better.
Yes.
So we'll just go there and be in the crowd and drink and eat and watch you fools have to do work.
You'll have more fun. Okay,
We'll
be kicking off at 5 and go until right before game time at 7 p.m. With the live show. Get out to Cork and Kerry at the Park, 33rd and Princeton on August the 9th for Sox in the Basement. And
get out
from
there all
the
the time, man.
We're already working through the guest, the possibilities, the giveaways, some fun stuff. I may have stuff for you to do in the crowd with people, but we're going to have an absolute blast. And so make sure that you get out there to Cork, make your plans right now. That is the Friday night game. It's 2 teams that are terrible. I get it, but it's Sox Cubs, and it should be a blast. And we're going to have an awful lot of fun kicking off at 5 p.m. at Cork and Kerry at the Park at 33rd and Princeton. See more at corkandkerry.com. But I'm excited about it because it's the first time that I've been out to do a live show.
It's been a minute.
In a year.
Yeah, it's been a little while. We haven't had an opportunity to do a whole lot live.
It's been my fault, okay? I mean, it has been. I've had listeners that have reached out and been like, Chris, I know what you're going through personally, and I know that it's got to be hard, but, we miss these things. So I credit these guys getting me out. It was their idea. It was their idea. They could have very easily said, hey, we want to do something, and let's just do it ourselves. But they know that Cork is our spot. And they're good friends. They're wonderful guys.
They really are guys. Great guys.
Yeah, they approached me with it, and I thought it was wonderful, and I thought it was really kind of them. That I feel like they're taking me back out in the public again, because I have not been back out in public since all the troubles over here. I've just been laser focused on making sure that the podcast and the business and everything in the house is going well. And I haven't really been thinking about being out in public and doing something live on the mic. So this is going to be a lot of fun for me. I'm really excited about it. It's nice to be back out and doing it. And I credit them for getting me back out there in front of people again. So that's awesome. It's the untold story of this event is that this is like, it'll feel like a full circle kind of, I'm finally back in my flow. I've felt that way recently. This is like the last thing I need to do to be completely back in my flow.
And I will say, I mean, to your credit, I've appreciated the fact that you've maintained an adequate level of hygiene throughout all of this, even though you haven't been going out in public as much.
Yeah, all right. That was great. I think that was awesome. That's why you have to hang around the crowd. That's why you have to still be there, because I need that. I need that shouted at some point while we're up there doing stuff. And now we have to plan this. It's going to be a little bit longer than a 30-minute Sox in the Basement show. It's going to be a lot more storytelling and fun and crowd interaction. And I can't wait for it. August the 9th at Cork and Kerry at the Park at 33rd and Princeton. Get out there and see us. And it's also going to be exclusive to there. There might be some clips that make it onto this show, but you will only be able to enjoy the full thing if you are there in person, and there's no charge to walk in the door. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Get out there and join us. All right, I took up a ton of time at the beginning of the show on that, so let's just get to the meat of things. I saw a report that Andrew Vaughn was inquired about by the Houston Astros, and I want to know why he's still on the White Sox.
That is a darn good question because let's again, I think at this point we have to ignore Andrew Vaughn as a guy who is a high top-end prospect, a guy that was counted on as being a core member of a rebuild and all of that stuff, and just look at the fact that you've got a first baseman who got hot, has been basically a replacement-level guy at best throughout most of his career.
1.1 B-WAR over 1,822 official Major League at-bats spanning from 2021 through this year. He got just hot enough to get back to replacement level at a 0.2 B-WAR. If somebody calls about him, it's time to say, what are you offering? Well, we haven't figured it out yet. We'll just pick somebody.
Right. And it doesn't even have to be, it doesn't even have to be something where you sit there and go, the Astros aren't offering enough. Sometimes it's just about sitting there saying, look, for the good of Andrew Vaughn, for the good of the White Sox, if there is a viable asset that would come back, Vaughn may need to change the scenery himself, but there's no shame in trading him and having him thrive with the Astros in a better lineup or something like that either. I think this is just a situation about what do you think Andrew Vaughn's going to be for you in the future? And if you're still clinging to hope at this point that Andrew Vaughn is going to turn the corner into a perennial all-star, just the odds are not in his favor. And you can do something maybe with that where it brings back a guy that's going to help you in your rotation or in the bullpen, or maybe it brings back a guy that is a couple of years away but comes up and is a more valuable piece than what Vaughn was ever going to represent.
Trade him for a Jake Eater type or a Kai Bush type. We saw the guys that we got in return last year, and Andrew Vaughn is no better than the pieces that brought those guys back. I know that, here's the reason why you have to move on from him. It's not because he's a terrible person. It's not because I dislike him personally. It's not because I don't think that he's a Major League Baseball player, because he is. The problem with Andrew Vaughn is he is the great hope of the Chicago White Sox and their PR department and their marketing division and what they've tried to build as look at him. He's a clubhouse leader and he's got a bat in the top half of your order. On any good team, Andrew Vaughn bats in the bottom half of your order, and he's a liability because generally you get far more home runs from the first base position. He is somebody who fits on a team if it was built in a way where they could afford to have his type of replacement level production in the bottom part of their order, taking up a spot at first base. Not many teams can do that. So if somebody knocks on the door and says, we have a need for him, and we're willing to give you a piece that will clear up the logjam that is Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets. We talked about this. I don't see how both of them can be on your team because it's the same player, just one on the right side and one on the left. They're both first basemen. I don't care what you tell me otherwise. And that's what they are. I want him moved or Sheets moved because we need to take away this toy that is being misused by the White Sox. Essentially, they're not using him properly and they value him higher than what he is, and that's what makes him a detriment. It's the same reason why Moncada has to be bought out. You buy out Moncada because he's not worth $25 million. You don't buy out Yohan Moncada because he's a bad baseball player. He's going to go to another team and he's going to perform. But he's going to perform like a $7 million player, not like a $25 million player. And Andrew Vaughn is going to be a part of a team someplace that uses him in the proper way. Much like how you saw Tim Anderson pigeonholed into one spot all last year, no matter what, because he was Tim Anderson and we couldn't get over it as a fan base, as a team, and management definitely couldn't get over it. He went to the Marlins and the Marlins said, you don't bat up that high. You're not that good. And then they had no problem letting him go. That's why Andrew Vaughn has to move, because of the mental block of what they wish he was and the fact that he's never going to be it. Sox in the Basement listeners, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high-pressure sales. They're not hanging out at your place. You're at theirs. They're not putting dirt on your floor. You're putting dirt on their floor. Wipe your shoes before you go in there. You're not animals. Everything is on display to check out. The glass designs, the little extras, no pictures in a book. See it in person. Owner in showroom and an owner on site to answer all of your questions. And all Window and Door Superstore installers, they don't farm out the work. They've been doing it that way for 40 years in Oak Forest since 1985. All major brands, custom made, no stock items. That way you get a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest, a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland, 6280 159th Street. Learn more at windowdooroakforest.com.
I'm going to throw a name out at you as a comp for Andrew Vaughn. And this is a guy that ended up getting a huge contract and ended up having a lot of people really kind of overvalue him. And it hasn't ended well for him. He's only 33 years old and he's out of the league, and that's Eric Hosmer. Eric Hosmer at least was a lefty bat, but he was a guy who his career batting average is 276. Okay, he was a guy that never hit more than 25 home runs in a season. Some of that was Happy Fun Ball era. And, he had one really good season where he hit 318 for the 2017 Royals with 25 home runs. That was his best year, and it was downhill after that, right? This was a guy that, in spite of the fact that he really didn't have the power, was viewed as somebody that could fit into a championship team or somebody that could fit into a better lineup. And the fact is that without the power, and I don't know exit velocities and stuff, and I know we can parse these two names, but just generally speaking, when you're talking about a first baseman who's going to rely on getting a lot of hits, getting a lot of doubles, and a high batting average because he's not a Pete Alonso, he's not a 40 home run guy, you're going to have a certain shelf life on him. Andrew Vaughn might have one or two decent to really good years in him, but I would bet dollars to donuts long term because he has not shown that he is developing the power. He's not shown that he has the batting profile of a typical corner infielder. That trading Andrew Vaughn now is not necessarily a bad thing because this might be the height of his value, for one. And two, this might be just, the time that he actually has value to anybody because he could fall off the shelf very, very easily. Nothing is given with this guy. He's not young anymore.
He may get better too. Andrew Vaughn may get better, but he's not going to get better when think of what they put on him as an organization. He comes up way too fast. They put him in the outfield where he just looks like a bumbling fool, and that's not his fault. He's not an outfielder. They screwed up his development. They screwed up his introduction into the majors. And then instead of treating him the way they should have treated him this year, which is send him down to AAA and let him work on his game. And maybe he comes back and it isn't just a couple weeks streak. Maybe he actually finally gets it together. This is a lost season. I don't understand how a guy with that many options, they just refuse to use it. And they continue to pigeonhole up at the top of the order. And it's because he's on the cover of different media guides or programs that they're printing. He's one of the faces that they like to show. He's somebody that was sold to a fan base. The biggest problem with this team is the way that they pander to the super fan. And I'm not saying the super fan as in the intelligent guy who can sit there and rattle off statistics and look at this team objectively. I'm talking about the fan that shows up decked out and all kinds of stuff of their team. It could be a White Sox fan. It could be a Dodgers fan. There's one in every fan base. There's a group of these. And they think do or die means even if the team loses every game except for 20 this year, it's all okay, and I can't criticize them because that's my team. That's what fandom is to them. Fandom is to them that they can't criticize their team. Fandom is to them that there's always a chance. You could sit there and show them the odds. They have a 1% chance of making it to the postseason, and they will sit there and say, not my team because I love them. But they're not realists. Those people are sold a bill of goods because the White Sox will market to them and they will tell them, look at all these guys we have. You're right. Everybody else out there is crazy. Get over here. It's better at the ballpark. We got John Schriffen telling you everything's going to be wonderful. We got Steve Stone on there saying, hey, you people don't think I know baseball, but look at this really good game. That was one of his most recent tweets. We have this really good game, and that's what they could be. So don't pay any attention to any of the other games. That's what they do. And those people come in and fill some seats. Not all the seats. I'm not saying they're all the people that are at the ballpark. I'm not trying to besmirch people that go to the games. I go to games. I love the team. I'm a White Sox fan. But there is a group that is like, if you pander to them enough, they are dollars in the bank every single month. They are a group that never leaves. And Andrew Vaughn being moved on hurts that group. And it's as if I feel like sometimes they pigeonhole guys in, or they don't make the right decision, because then they would have to admit to that group that they're not infallible. And sometimes the player that they're selling to that group isn't that good. It's not the main group of Sox fans, but that group exists. You see them out there on message boards. You see them. They're the ones that get featured. They're the ones that were telling Rick Hahn that he was doing a great job last year. Remember that? I talk to fans and they love me. That's who he's talking to.
Yeah, and you're right. Those guys exist in every single fandom. For some fandoms, like on the north side, that seems to be everybody, right? But there's always going to be a certain element of that. And look, I don't fault those guys. I mean, that's great. If you can have so much passion about anything in your life that you can find love for it, and you can find happiness enjoying it even when it's at its most miserable. Like that's a great thing. Like I don't have that.
Don't blame them. Blame the team that panders to them, because it doesn't make any sense. Because every Major League Baseball team has that group of fans who, again, I keep saying I don't have a problem with them, but that's their mentality. We all fandom differently, but this team is one of the few that panders to them and doesn't make the right decision when it comes to player personnel sometimes, because they sold them a bill of goods 3 years ago, and they can't admit that bill of goods didn't come true.
No, it's not even that. It's not even pandering to those guys. They expect every fan to be that. I think that's where the White Sox differ from other organizations, is that they don't get it. And honestly, I was watching something earlier where they were ranking NBA teams, and how the Bulls are basically like the team that would be least desirable for a coach to come to because of Jerry Reinsdorf, because of the way the Reinsdorfs run the Bulls. And it's the same kind of a thing. They expect like Bulls fans became in the 90s, where it was we're just fans of the team because holy cow, look at this. And some of that fandom hasn't gone away for the Bulls, which is great. But for the White Sox, and for most of other major sports, I'm talking outside of baseball, there's that group of do or dies, which is great for them. But then the rest of the fans are a little bit more fickle, and it's we want to see a good product. We're willing to spend the money. We love the team. This is the team we want to root for. And we want to root for the players. Like I want Andrew Vaughn to succeed. I want Yoan Moncada to succeed. I haven't seen it yet. And we're coming to a point where logically I'm sitting here going, okay, now give me a shiny new toy to play with, Jerry, because I want to root for something else, because I've grown tired of waiting for these guys. And when I talk about waiting on these guys, part of the bill of goods is that there seems to be, once a guy comes up as a rookie with the White Sox, he is young until they determine he's not a young guy anymore, right? He's young until he arrives and then becomes a veteran when he's reached his peak. And then it's like, but now we've seen it. But until that, it's always about the potential. Anybody that they draft, anybody that they sign young is just full of potential, even though Andrew Vaughn is 26 years old this year. Yoan Moncada is in his late 20s. The guys that were counted on to be part of the rebuild that were acquired for guys like Chris Sale and Adam Eaton are old men by baseball standards to a certain degree, because they're approaching their 30th birthday. They're not 22, 23-year-old kids who have boundless potential. They are reaching the top of their upper limits. So when we talk about saying like, hey, Andrew Vaughn might be tradable to the Astros, why hasn't Chris Getz jumped on that? Part of it is because, again, like I said, you look at somebody like Eric Hosmer, who around age 27 hit his peak, and then things started to slowly fall off. And yeah, he got a big contract from the Padres, and he ended up on the Cubs and kicking to the Red Sox, and now at age 33 he's out of baseball. Tell me that's not a possibility for Andrew Vaughn. Well, White Sox get something for him, because you know what? I'd love to see Andrew Vaughn succeed as a Southsider. I haven't seen Andrew Vaughn succeed as a Southsider. I think the White Sox ruined him a couple of years ago by how they handled him when he was a young player. But at the end of the day, at this point, I'm sitting there going, look, if you want to keep me interested, stop telling me that Andrew Vaughn's got potential and can turn a corner. I don't know what corner he's going to turn, but he's never going to be Paul Konerko. Okay? So don't tell me that.
Here's the thing about the tweet then that was put out, and it was reporting what Jim Bowden had said. And he's an MLB analyst, CBS Sports, The Athletic, SiriusXM, MLB Network. I mean, he normally has some pretty good stuff. Right, exactly.
Yeah, he is like the MLB roving dude.
And he was talking about how busy the Astros were, and he said they had asked the Mets about Pete Alonso, the Diamondbacks about Christian Walker, the Cubs about Cody Bellinger, the White Sox about Andrew Vaughn, and then he lists some pitchers as well. And well, I think that Vaughn gets dealt if they can't get the better players on that list. So that's probably why it hasn't happened yet. Like I go, well, let's just trade him for no, but I'm excited about the interest because again, this is something that we have not heard a lot of other people talk about. We talk about on this show, the idea that you would love for somebody to say, you know what, we couldn't get this guy, but we still need a piece. Gavin Sheets fits or Andrew Vaughn fits. And that one of them being moved on with the amount of first base free agents out there and the money that is going to be coming available after Jimenez leaves and after Moncada leaves. You don't have to raise the payroll. You just need to redistribute the funds with this young pitching. If you remove one of those guys, you can still replace it with a bat that's better. And you'd have the ability to do so. So Alonso's probably number one on that list, and Walker's probably number two, and Bellinger's injured. So there is a path where Vaughn could end up getting dealt, and there may be other teams like the Astros looking at him in Sheets, and that's what I found most interesting going on this week. I know we have to wait for the draft to occur. Jim Fox told us that. James Fox from Future Sox was on the last episode. That draft preview still available. It's happening this weekend that the episode comes out that you're listening to right now. But if it has not happened yet, or you want to hear what he said about some of the players the White Sox could take, because I think they took the guy that he thought they were going to take. I'm banking on him. James Fox is generally right. I guarantee one of those names that he previewed is who the White Sox end up taking this weekend. You can go back and listen to that show, and we got the Sox Nerd for you right now. That music means only one thing. The Sox Nerd, Dave Marin, the guy who puts up all those crazy tidbits and interesting trivia nuggets on the scoreboard at the rate, joins us right now on Sox in the Basement with his weekly feature, and it's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and see everything they have going on this weekend and beyond at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me today?
Chris, Michael Kopech finished off a rare White Sox victory Wednesday with something even rarer, an immaculate inning. The flurry of 9 strikes on 9 pitches was only the second in the 124-year history of the Chicago American League Ball Club, and the first since August 22nd, 1923, 36,848 days prior, when Hollis Sloppy Thurston accomplished the feat against the Philadelphia A's at Comiskey Park. In Sox history, this achievement is rarer than a perfect game, a no-hitter, a World Series title, and a walk-off grand slam. Kopech's electric march into Sox history also made the park come alive, even in this miserable season. To paraphrase Terrence Mann in Field of Dreams, the immaculate inning, quote, reminds us of all that was once good, and it could be again. It also highlights another aspect of baseball I love. In every game, no matter how mundane or meaningless, something incredibly special can happen. It could be so unique, it may have never happened before or will never happen again. Wednesday was probably the 15,000th baseball game I've watched in my life, and this was my first immaculate inning. I've now witnessed as many perfect games as I have immaculate innings. A few more nuggets on the feet. Kopech recorded the 116th immaculate inning in MLB history. It was the first in the 9th and the first to finish off a win since September 16th, 2022, when Ryan Heldy saved the Cardinals' 6-5 win over the Reds. It was the first by an AL pitcher finishing off a victory since the Red Sox' Craig Kimbrell went 9 pitches, 9 strikes in the 9th for the win over the Brewers on May 11th, 2017. Prior to Kopech, the last AL pitcher to not just save with an immaculate inning was the Rays' Rafael Soriano on August 23rd, 2010 in Anaheim. Corey Lee joins Hall of Famer Ray Schalk as Sox to catch an immaculate inning. Speaking of inning, Martin Maldonado is the only catcher to be on the receiving end of 2 immaculate innings in a game. On June 15th, 2023 for Houston, he caught the eyes of Luis Garcia and Phil Matan. Before I get to my zinger, a reminder, you can access my blog at soxinthebasement.com, and there is plenty of Sox Nerd material on Twitter and on the scoreboard at Guaranteed Rate Field. My zinger, what now is the rarest within reason feat in Sox history? How about a 4 strikeout inning? This has only been done once. On August 21st, 1997 in Detroit, Wilson Alvarez struck out Clark, Nevin, Phillips, and Miller, with Nevin reaching on a wild pitch for the only 4K inning in Sox history. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Kopech, the immaculate inning, and especially Martin Maldonado.
So Michael Kopech has an immaculate inning. That's spectacular.
That really was, yeah.
I mean, is it the greatest immaculate inning? I don't know. There were several pitches out of the zone that were fouled off. Like a lot of that immaculate inning is on the batters that were up there swinging at it. But I don't want to take away credit. He got it. It's a very rare thing. It's awesome. And you know what I love about it the most, Ed? Him recently, he looks like the kind of guy that could get a prospect that would be of value because a team wants a guy that can just rear back and fire it. And the way he's pitching right now, that's a guy the White Sox will be fielding calls for now that the draft is over after this weekend and everybody starts looking at trading up until the deadline.
Yeah, and you know what I like about it too is look, this gets back to the Andrew Vaughn conversation, because really when you talk about Moncada, Jimenez, Vaughn, Kopech, those being the primary guys, because I'm going to leave Luis Robert Jr. off of that, but when you're talking about that remnant of the Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams core that was created for the retool, rebuild, whatever Rick Hahn was attempting there, Kopech is now a bullpen guy, and bullpen guys are easier to find than, say, a starting pitcher. So if you get a guy that's got starter upside for a Michael Kopech as a bullpen guy, that's a better trade. Okay, even though Kopech might go on and save a bunch of games or get into the playoffs and really help a team, and again, that's great for Michael Kopech, and you know, and it does validate a little bit of like, hey, the White Sox aren't completely incompetent. They just weren't able to put together a winning team. Okay. But get some value for these guys now and get some value for these guys while they're hot, because again, Michael Kopech is not a young guy that is an up-and-comer anymore. This is kind of what Michael Kopech is. This is where Michael Kopech starts to reach his peak. And if Michael Kopech reaches his peak by helping the Dodgers win the World Series, cool. Especially if the guy that comes back from the Dodgers is not Trace Thompson.
I don't think we're ever going to see him again because Kenny's not around.
Also, I'm pretty sure Trace Thompson has stopped playing baseball just in general.
Well, yeah. I mean, he had nowhere else to go.
No, I mean, the White Sox were going to sign him. What else is he going to do?
I mean, here's the thing. Michael Kopech, as a pitcher, statistically, first off, we called it in the offseason. We said it a year ago. Relief pitcher. As a relief pitcher, though, you want to trade him when he's hot. You want to move him. And if somebody offers you something, you take it. Because if you look at his overall numbers out of the pen this year, they're ghastly. A 5.18 earned run average in 40 games. He had 40 innings pitched. So 40 innings pitched in 40 games, a 5.18 earned run average, and a whip of 1.425. That is an entirely inconsistent pitcher out of the pen. That is a guy who's going to be streaky, and then he is going to be maddening. And you want a team to grab him before he becomes maddening again, because it's coming. And I would think as a GM, I mean, I try to put myself in the shoes of Chris Getz or any GM during this trade deadline who wants to move a player like a Michael Kopech. You may think you could squeeze a little bit more out of a team, but then you better not let your manager bring him out for the next 3 days while you're trying to do that. Because he's one bad appearance away from reminding that team of how volatile he is, right? Like if you get close on a deal, you got to ring down to Pedro and be like, by the way, don't put Michael into a game for the next couple days while I try to get this deal done. Because if he goes out there and gives up 4 all of a sudden, they may change their mind. That's how volatile he is. That's why watching him with the immaculate inning, seeing what he's done in recent games, that's what makes him so tradable this week. I'm not saying in 2 weeks he may not be as tradable. Like this is why right now this is strike while the iron's hot. Don't put him in any bad situations, right? Like at this point, I wouldn't send Michael Kopech out there as a team. I would have a mandate to my manager. He only goes up against the bottom of the order and guys that we know after, and the White Sox don't have a department that would do this, or at least a big enough department that would do this, that would look at like the metrics and guys that he performs well against and guys he doesn't perform well against and all other stuff. But I would try to take every advantage of putting him in situations where he's the least likely to look bad until you can get him off your team. Because that's how volatile he is. I mean, almost a player and a half making on base for a relief pitcher, that's bad.
It's not just Kopech either. It's Vaughn again, who has been extremely streaky this year. It's, even Eloy, if he ever sets foot on the field long enough to actually get into a hot streak, or, anybody that you think has value that is not necessarily going to be a part of the White Sox future, then if they maximize their value and somebody offers you something good for them, there's really very little for Chris Getz to lose to take back that player. And again, the good news is Trace Thompson is no longer in the league.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.